What is art, and what is a video game? The question of whether or not video games constitute as art has been debated for almost as long as video games have existed, and something that I have always personally considered. I believe it is when a game elicits an emotional response in a player, thoughts and ideas brought about from the experience of a game which transcends the medium into an artistic form. The evocation of feelings that go beyond the reward of the satisfaction of completing tasks or fulfilling objectives, or beyond just being merely entertained. For me, I answer the question with an emphatic yes, or at least, yes, video games can be art. This, however, opens up the possibility of another question. Can a game become such a focused art piece that it can no longer really be considered a game? If a piece of graphical interactive media exists entirely to make us feel and to think and to not actually allow us as players to do anything much except guide ourselves through its story, does it diminish the video game as a medium? If the definition of art needed to be re-evaluated to include video games, do we also need to re-evaluate the definition of a video game? The walking simulator genre is the best example of these ideas coming to fruition in modern gaming. While the term walking simulator was originally coined as a term of derision from some critics, some even going as far as to say that they are not real games, it has now been embraced by fans and developers of these types of games, which can offer a unique and immersive storytelling experience. I was won over to this kind of game after playing through the Stanley Parable, possibly the most widely known and highly regarded example of this genre, and also a game which turns the entire concept of what a video game is right on its head. This prompted me to take a look at other walking sims to see if I could settle my thoughts on whether the artistry of video games had started to eat itself too much. The first course of this metaphorical consumption, the appetizer if you will, is the progenitor of the walking sim genre in modern gaming, Dear Esther. In Dear Esther, you are wandering around an uninhabited Scottish Hebridean island while hearing a man's narration of letters to his deceased wife.
Dear Esther, I sometimes feel as if I've given birth to this island. Somewhere between the longitude and latitude, a split opened up, and it beached remotely here. No matter how hard I correlate, it remains a singularity, an alpha point in my life that refuses all hypothesis.
The unnecessarily metaphorically abstract and sometimes even nonsensical ramblings of the narrator gradually builds a story of a man who has lost his wife in a car accident on the M5 between Exeter and Bristol. He drives himself up and down this road several times, which, having driven this myself, would be in itself indicative of this character's insanity, looking for answers as to how and why his wife died in such a way. He has had a meeting with the man who was in the other vehicle of Esther's accident and gets no satisfaction from this either, so he takes the next reasonable course of action, which is to shore up on the deserted Scottish island and draw all over it in fluorescent paint. I know grief affects people in different ways, but this seems pretty extreme to say the least. It's just a very sad story, made even sadder by its lonely, isolated setting. The environment really is the star of the game here, as it really is a hauntingly beautiful place. Every frame is a screenshot, and it was a satisfying place to explore. Ultimately though, I didn't feel like I got a lasting impression after playing this game. The story just felt too vaguely interpretive and obscure to really resonate with, and to quote Peter Griffin, it insists upon itself. I respect this game for being an important footnote for this genre, but it all just felt a bit too dull and sad for my taste. Maybe this would be an example of this sort of game being a bit too arty and not very gamey, but this game walked so that these other games could, well, also walk. The next step in my walking simulator journey is a journey, where you have to venture across a desert towards a giant glowing mountain. In stark contrast from Dear Esther's reality-grounded Scottish dreariness, this game is set in a bright, vivid, fantastical world, and entirely without any words, the idea of the importance of your destination is somehow conveyed. No narrative, just go here because the gods of the QR codes have chosen you to do so. Along the way, you meet with others on the same journey, and it is revealed at the end that these were real other players that you connected with, and you can explore the world together. Touching cloth gives you the power of temporary flight and triggers events which help you to advance through the game's stages. This gives it an element of platforming and puzzling to the gameplay as you use these mechanics to traverse through areas, which takes it a few steps beyond just walking through a story. The game environments really are astonishingly spectacular, from the hazy desert to the dark and ponderous subterranean areas to the cold and windy mountainous regions. You feel every inch of the struggle of the protagonist's trials through each of the sections, making it an empathetic and emotional sensory experience. Again, all of this is without words in the narrative. It's show, don't tell storytelling at its finest and most well crafted. It makes it all the more ecstatic and cathartic to reach the ending as you soar majestically to the pinnacle of the mountain at the game's climax. An outstandingly beautiful piece of art wrapped in a genuine game with some challenge, this is an awe-inspiring experience. A game that was never about the destination, it was all about the journey. Coming right back down to earth now with the next game, Firewatch. Here we follow the story of Henry, a man in his late 30s who takes a summer job as a lookout in a remote forest after his wife is taken into care after suffering from early onset dementia. Your only human contact in this game is Delilah, who is instructing your duties via handheld radio as you hike around the very nice national park environment.
Hello, Two Forks Tower.
Hello? Whoever this is?
It's Henry, right?
Yeah.
I'm Delilah.
Your humorous conversations often also turn very personal as you delve into the story of your wife's illness, and Delilah recounts stories of her experiences in the forest, such as the tale of a former lookout who sneakily brought his young son along for the summer.
Well, I am flush with ropes now. That pack was full of them, in decent condition too.
That's lucky.
Thank you, Brian Goodwin.
Wait, who?
The bag had the name Brian Goodwin sewn into the top.
Huh. Wow.
Do you know him?
Yeah, I just haven't heard that name in a few years.
It was a lookout?
Yeah, kinda, I guess. He was stationed in Two Forks, your lookout, with his dad Ned 3 summers ago. Great kid.
You can bring children out here?
No. You know, I'm not a stickler for rules. They took off halfway through the summer.
The main fire hazard seems to be the sparks flying from the flirtatious conversations between Henry and Delilah, which at one point seem to get so spicy that they set fire to a large section of the forest.
I'm glad you're here.
Why do you say that?
Because I do. I'm not crazy. I mean, we've had such a good time, right? I don't talk to the other lookouts as much as I talk to you. Not in the same way. I wish I was over there. We could sit outside. We could talk without these radios. We could, you know.
It is later revealed by a chance discovery of a notepad that some creep has been listening to and transcribing your raunchy conversations for some sort of unknown sick pleasure. Paranoid about them revealing incriminating secrets, you investigate and find a sophisticated surveillance operation and fall foul to a nearby saboteur who has been wrecking things and starting fires. They trap you in a cave where it turns out to be the final resting place of young Brian Goodwin. As the fires rage and you and Delilah's escape helicopters close in, the unseen perpetrator finally makes himself known on a recorded message.
Yeah, hi, Henry. You can't blame me for keeping an eye on you. Not after bumping into you back in May. Down by the cave, for croc's sake. I've been up here for 3 years. I kept it cozy. Winters are harsh as hell, and I ran out of books. But I got that antenna rigged up, and Delilah, she's a record you don't gotta flip. I kinda get why Brian took to her. But you gotta know I didn't kill him. Alright, we were climbing. I was teaching him. Brian was uneducated in the way to do anything. He just fucking didn't sink his anchor the right way. You know, I thought about going back, having to answer questions, and having to get him put in the ground, and I didn't see the point. Don't come looking for me.
After your hike to Delilah's lookout station, you have one last heartfelt conversation as the game's enthralling storyline reaches its bittersweet end. Firewatch has a truly brilliant and captivating story, and the reflection between Henry and Ned's pain of their losses makes for an empathetic dual plot thread. The lush setting of the game, in its slightly comic book cartoony art style, really is a stunning place to explore, with the explorative wilderness traversal being an intriguing main gameplay challenge. This really was an outstandingly good adventure game, and probably the one I'd encourage people to try if they have any doubt about the merits of the walking simulator genre. The final leg of my walking simulator marathon is the deeply mysterious What Remains of Edith Finch. You play as the titular Edith, who, after her mother's death, has become the last person left alive of her eccentric family, so she goes back to investigate the Finch family funhouse, which she left as a child. The story is told through Edith's narration of her book she has written about her experience, which playfully appears visually as you explore. You weave through odd passageways in the bizarrely designed house, finding the bedrooms of the deceased family members where you find clues about the stories of how they died. The stories are interactive sections, each with unique art styles, and tragically many involve young children getting into some of the most ridiculously unfortunate accidents I've ever heard of, such as eating poisonous holly berries after being desperately starved after being given no dinner, or flying off a swing built next to a cliff, or a baby drowning while unattended in the bath. Which, as a parent myself, I can't help but feel horribly judgmental over how easily avoidable those deaths were. At least there's the story of the dad getting killed by the deer he forced his daughter to reluctantly murder to cleanse the palate. Then there's the story of the awesomely named Lewis, whose story involves being so bored at his mundane, repetitive production line job that he slips into a drug-induced hallucinatory psychosis, which results in him cutting his own head off in a fish slicer, which all felt very oddly personally relatable. It's all a very captivating story and told very well as a video game in a way which I don't think would be nearly as interesting in any other medium. The interactivity of the fates of each of the family really brings a more sympathetic angle to the story, and as a gameplay function breaks the monotony of simply moving around the environment. This for me highlights the unique merits the walking simulator has as a storytelling form. Whether it's the solemn and reflective Hebridean walk of Dear Esther, the fantastical adventure of Journey, Henry's escapist hike of Firewatch, or Edith's family history discovery of What Remains of Edith Finch, the walking simulator allows us to live and to feel these character stories in a way that no book or movie could ever convey. Are these games art? I would say they absolutely are. In fact, the world of fine art has opened its doors to video games more and more in recent years, with art museums hosting art of video games exhibitions and many other shows of recognition. Traditionally, a game involves some sort of competition or prize, but the modern definition should perhaps be treated without such systemic boundaries. The challenge of games should not be quantified by an objective and statistical achievement, but instead be considered by how it challenges our thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. If you want to play games to fight and craft and level up and win, then that's absolutely considered valid, but there should also be room for simply enjoying a narrative game experience. And ultimately, if even the world of fine art can be accepting of video games as a medium, is it really too much to ask of the gaming community to be as accepting of walking simulators as real games?